Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to Begin My Guest. Today we have two guests, and they are twin brothers, and they're both authors. And we have Clyde Hakim with us. Clyde is on the right. He is an author of the book Walk in My Shoes. And right beside him is Clyde Hakim, his brother, his twin brother, and he wrote Anything for Bananas. So let's start with Anything for Bananas. How's that? This is actually, tell us all about it. This is what your mom had written, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes. What happened was one day I was rummaging and moving boxes in my basement, and I found this manuscript. The manuscript is actually 55 years old. And so my mother wrote it when we were quite young. We were probably around 12 years old. And what happened was I had been moving these boxes from house to house all of my life.
Right.
And finally, when I moved to the last house, I found this particular manuscript.
Were you
And
really shocked to find it?
I was. I started reading it immediately, and I said to myself, gee, this is great. And I hadn't read it in such a long time, and it brought back nice memories. So what I did was I took the manuscript, printed it, several pieces, and sent it out to a lot of my friends and also acquaintances.
Yeah.
And I asked them to review it. And what happened was, after they reviewed it, they said, you have to publish this book. This is really a nice manuscript.
Yep.
So that's what made me start this whole process, this whole journey.
Did she write it
publishing.
when you were both kids?
Yes, we were about 12 or 13 years old. She used to gather us in her study and read the manuscript to us in her best theatrical voice.
And this was her first and only book, right? Her only?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, this is
She hit it right on the head on the first time around.
Right.
You should see the beautiful illustrations. This is just one of them.
Yeah, that's a great illustration. This is Benji feeling glum about the part that he thinks that his ship is going to go home. Part of the story takes place on an ocean cruise liner. It actually takes place in 1929. So what happens is that a lot of the illustrations in the book reflect that era. And this is a time when Benji and his family were on their way to Brazil, to Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, in order to visit some members of the family. And so now he goes on this escapade with his parents, and a lot of things happen when he gets to the mountain and takes the cable car.
Yeah.
And he takes the cable car to Sugarloaf Mountain in Brazil, which is very, very popular and well known. It overlooks Ipanema Beach and harbor.
Did your mom take
Rio.
cruises at all?
Yes. This mirrors what she could remember from her cruise at 9 years old. So what happened was her parents took her on a cruise to Brazil to visit family.
Yeah.
And this is in 1929 on a huge ocean liner, which was very rare for a family and someone that young to take a pleasure cruise like this. And I think what happened is, in the many travels she's had, she's traveled all over the world, many different countries, the Middle East, other parts of Europe, to China, to Africa, to Egypt, all of
She was
these
just
places.
a kid. She went with her parents. She was the only child?
No, there was one other child which was quite a bit older. So there was about a 20-year difference between her brother and
I can relate.
and my mother.
Yeah, it's like two only children.
Exactly.
It really is. My brother and I were almost a decade apart.
Right. So my grandparents had to start all over again raising a child.
That's what my parents had to do when I finally brought a child, because I was the youngest.
Yeah.
These are absolutely beautiful. They are by one of our guests. He is a twin brother of Clyde Hakim. This is Clyde Hakim's book. When did you decide to put it together? How long has it been since you put it?
Well, this was my pandemic project. It took a year and a half to put this book together from the start. I looked for illustrators all over the world via the internet, and I finally found one after many, many tests in Olympia, Washington. and his name is Carl Mefford.
Yeah, he did a great job with the
Yeah,
cover.
he did it.
Look at this cover.
And we worked together on each and every scene in order to come up with the right illustrative approach so
Yeah.
that he would understand the story completely. And I made sure that with each illustration you're looking at, you could literally flip through the book and literally learn the whole story in part without reading it.
And their
so
mom's name was Nora Atun Hakim.
Nora Antoon
Nora
Hakim.
Atun Hakim. What beautiful
Right.
names. Where are they
Yeah.
from? Where were they from? Where did they originate?
Lebanese.
Beautiful. My dentist, Dr. Nassar, is Lebanese. He is really, really cool.
Yeah, she's Lebanese.
This
Yeah.
is Clyde, how can they get a hold of your book, and if they want you to do a presentation?
People can get a hold of my book on www.anythingforbananas.com. They can also, that's the website, and if you go to the website and you go to the contact page, you'll easily be able to send us a note or call me directly with a telephone number.
Now, we're going to move slightly to the right. From my book point, maybe for yours, I'm not sure, but we're going to talk with Cliff. And Cliff, you and I talked together. Remember, you called, or I called you, or whatever, we talked, and you mentioned Clyde. I think we were on the phone, right? That Clyde just came in from Plymouth, and I used to live in Kingston, and yeah, my parents were in Foxborough. And you, Cliff, live in Arlington,
Yes.
where my grandparents lived. Yeah. That's where my father and my aunt grew up, Arlington High School and all that type of thing. Is it still there?
Yeah, Arlington's become a town for a lot of people kind of coming in from Boston and Cambridge
Yeah.
who can't afford those environments anymore.
Yeah, I got it.
So it's become kind of more, gentrified, upscale, that kind of thing.
See,
you
as a
know?
kid growing up, I always saw their estate up there in Kensington Park as really super upscale and everything. I mean, it was... I'm
Right.
sorry they sold the house. I really am. It was gorgeous. This, by Cliff, is called Walk in My Shoes, The Path to Empathy and Compassion. Cliff, was this a pandemic book?
It was.
Yeah.
I had been taking art classes at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
Yeah?
And my medium is pen and ink. And I began drawing ocean scenes and trees and
Shoes, there's a picture of a shoe.
flowers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then one day I started drawing shoes, and I thought, I really love drawing shoes because they were kind of a universal symbol. Everybody wears shoes, and then I thought about the theme, walk in my shoes, and my art teacher kind of was very supportive.
Yeah.
And I began imagining people's shoes in my household, people in the classroom, our art classroom. And I thought, I'm really quite tired of our unkind world.
Oh, me too.
And it seemed
Yeah.
that we were not only under siege by a virus, but we were also under siege by one another. Take away the virus, we were still treating one another unkindly. So I thought, well, how could I express that there were plenty of people in the world that were kind and wanted to be kinder? And I started to interview people. I interviewed 35 people for the book,
Yeah.
and interviewed people and began to draw their shoes. So I would say to people, could I interview you on the subject of kindness? I'd like to ask you 3 or 4 questions. And could I also draw your shoes as a
Yeah.
symbol of your kindness? So people love the idea. And so
Yeah, definitely. We all like... Well, then there's Imelda Marcos, who had a ton of shoes.
Right.
So
right.
you have the contest. You said there are 35 people. How did you find them? Online?
No, I knew some of the people because I was formerly an executive coach and a counselor, and I kind of tapped into my network. Some of those people referred me to other people, and then wherever I went, if I went to a party or whatever, I would tell people the project I was involved with, and some people would volunteer. And I could just tell by people's disposition whether they kind of fit that model of someone who was a listener and somewhat compassionate. And I took the chance, and I happened to find 35 great people.
This is a this is a thick book, and it took you this short a time when the pandemic began?
Well, actually, I began it, in fairness, about 2 years ago because of all the illustrations.
Sure.
And then once it started to gain traction, then I kind of made it my full-time job. And I hired Robin Brooks as the book designer. And together we, designed the book and used my illustrations and included the stories that both the preface I wrote for each person,
right,
and then the verbatim stories that they shared with me.
We're talking with Clyde Hakim, his brother Cliff Hakim. They're both authors, and we were just talking with Clyde, and he put together his mother's manuscript. It's basically a children's book. Would you think, Clyde? Anything
Yes, it
for
is.
bananas. And we've just been talking with his twin brother, although you wouldn't know they're twins. I didn't know when they walked in. Walk in My Shoes by Cliff Hakim. Now, Cliff, how can they get a hold of your book?
You can get a hold of the book by going to my website, cliff@walkinmyshoesart.com. That's my email, cliff@walkinmyshoesart.com, or www.walkinmyshoesart.com.
Do you both give presentations?
Yes,
Clyde, where have you been? Where have you given presentations?
at several bookstores. The book is available at several bookstores on Cape Cod, also in Worcester and in Plymouth.
How about Tatnuck, right over here in Westboro?
Not yet. I haven't gotten there yet.
Well,
I'm working on it.
That's one of the ones I send my authors to, because they're all over the lot here. Cliff, where have you been?
Well, yesterday I was just at the International School of Cambridge.
What's
And
that?
I gave a presentation. It's a private school where kids come from all over the world.
Oh,
And my audience was about 13 7th and 8th graders. And they were just lovely, and they were so emotionally intelligent. And they actually, the teacher conducts a course there called Unselfie. And it's about taking the cell phone off of you and directing it toward the other, and then eventually toward society, doing volunteer work. So the kids sent me this card,
Ooh, yeah.
gave me this card after the presentation yesterday, and it says, "One small act of kindness can change the world."
isn't that the
And,
truth? I hope.
and what my book is about really is about those small acts of kindness. It's about how we greet one another, how we put aside our judgment, and we offer acceptance through a hello, through a thank you, by doing, Jan, what you're doing, and that's listening intently. So just to listen to someone is such a huge gift of kindness. So these kids are wonderful. They illustrated their
They did.
their shoes, and they talked about being, if they're comfortable in their own shoes,
Yeah.
they can be more comfortable in extending their kindness to others.
Yeah.
So they kind of viscerally get it.
They got it.
And the most popular course in this school is the course about exploring the world, exploring the self, and exploring the other. And so they're really saying that if kids can begin by really owning who they are and appreciating who other people are,
Sure.
then everything else will flow from that place.
This is
you
so
know, and-
timely. Oh my gosh.
And I think in our society, we've really forgotten how just greeting, one another, having the courage to just for a moment take yourself out of yourself, your own little problems, and just giving yourself the time and the energy to say hello to someone else, or say, how can I help in this moment. And so the rewards of doing that is you feel better.
Yeah.
Kindness, empathy, compassion, they're an energy. They're a way to say that I release my energy to you, and I extend my kindness to you, and then it comes back. It comes back in spades. We've all heard of
Yeah.
paying it forward.
Oh yeah.
And one of the people I interviewed was a landscaper, and he just loved telling the stories about how he would, and this guy, made like $15 an hour, $20 an hour, and he would go into a dollar store, and he would notice someone who was gathering, usually a woman who was gathering gifts for their child, and he would take his credit card out, and he'd pay without them knowing it.
I love that.
And, that's kindness in motion. Or he would, at the grocery store, he would bring an older person's grocery cart back,
Yeah.
and put it away. And I said, John, why do you do this? He said, because if more people did this in the world, we'd have a better world.
Sure.
One act of kindness. So imagine if each person extended one act of kindness a day, 365 acts of kindness, and multiply that times just half of the world population.
Yeah.
We'd have a different world.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. It really is. I'm thinking your mom must have been such an influence on you with the writing. It's obvious you both caught the bug.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Both of you.
yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you, when you graduated high school, Clyde, when you graduated high school, did you know what you were going to do? Did you know you'd be a writer, or did you go into something entirely different?
No, I really had a great deal of interest in communications, so I actually majored in radio and television communications and media.
Where'd you go? By any chance, Emerson?
Indiana University, Bloomington.
My father was in radio, founded WIDE in Biddeford, Maine. He was an announcer. It's where he met my mother, who was on stage at Emerson. They've been in English class.
Right. I also have another degree in fine arts and design.
Aha.
So the combination of communications and fine arts,
Yeah.
in this sense, came together.
Definitely.
Right.
Again, this is Clyde Hakim's book, Anything for Bananas. Adorable. Clyde, again, how can they get a hold of this?
They can get a hold of my book by going to www.anythingforbananas.com or going to the website and looking at the contact page and sending me a message. And we'll get right back to you.
And Cliff Hakim, his twin brother, Walk in My Shoes, The Path to Empathy and Compassion. Cliff, how can they get your book?
You can get my book by going to walkinmyshoesart.com.
So, Cliff, when you left high school, did you know you would write? What did you know you were going to
No,
write?
I think what I knew was that I was at heart a very creative person and a very curious person. And that if I could follow the path of curiosity, being interested in others, ask questions. And so I went into the business really of asking people questions and asking people what their story was as a counselor and as a consultant. And then my story as a writer was I was just awful at English.
You were awful at English?
I was awful. I got D's. They wanted to fail me. They wanted to kick me out. And so one day I said to myself, I need to do something with my ideas.
Yeah.
And so I began to teach myself how to write.
What did your English teacher think of this? Did you show her, hey, look at this?
No, I didn't have any English teacher. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that I began to say, one of the things I most want to do with my life is to write, and I want to write books. And so I began to dabble with my passion at the time, which was people's careers.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were kind of flummoxed with, how do I advance in a world that is so crowded and competitive.
Sure.
So I began to develop ideas through my work about how people could do that, and I began to write about that, and I wrote a bestseller called We Are All Self-Employed. And that bestseller coined the social contract that, in fact, we're not dependent in this world, but we're independent and interdependent.
Yeah.
And with that entrepreneurial mindset, whether you work in an organization or outside of an organization, you can make your way and have more mobility in your career. So you asked a question about my mom and what she gave to us.
Yeah.
And I think what my mom gave me was the sense that a conversation was an act of kindness. And what I think the world has forgotten about today is that conversation counts. And people today go into a place of fight or flight.
Yeah.
That if you don't agree with me, I'm going to take off, I'm going to flee, or I'm going to put up my dukes, and that's the way to deal with things. And I began to think that if you can engage people in a conversation, if you're in a coffee shop, if you're waiting to get your car repaired, if you're waiting to get a roll in a bakery, then you are both connecting with humanity, connecting with that person, and you're connecting with yourself. And so that became a lot of the seed that kind of generated my writing and my career and my thought about how we've shut down. I wanted to wake us up.
Yeah.
I wanted to invigorate the possibility of people through,
Where did you both grow up?
In Shrewsbury,
Well,
Massachusetts.
you're right up the street.
Right down the road.
In Shrewsbury. And then
Right.
where did you end up from there? That's when you moved to Arlington and you moved to Plymouth? after your high school, or?
Oh, no. Several moves later. This is the last move I'll probably stay in Plymouth, but from Shrewsbury to place, I lived in Harvard, Massachusetts. I lived in Concord, Massachusetts. I lived on Cape Cod for 14
Me too.
years.
What town in Cape Cod?
Falmouth.
We were
Falmouth.
in Dennisport and South Yarmouth.
Yes.
Yeah, my parents.
Well, our family used to vacation in Falmouth,
Yeah.
and ever since we were probably 10 years old, we've been going there. And I loved the town so much that I decided to build a house there and actually stayed there because I found that I could work from home.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful opportunity.
Well, now, did you go to college, Cliff, after high school?
I went to, my graduate school was BC, Boston College.
What did you major in?
And I majored in special ed.
Special ed?
Yeah, and the neat thing about that was what I most learned was breaking down learning into component parts so that anybody could learn something if the teacher was willing to take responsibility for the learning. And so at the time, prior to that, I had a very difficult time learning, for example, learning how to read. And so I think I followed that vein of study because I wanted to be involved in work that didn't blame people for their way of being, but really honored the person and gave them dignity for the way they learned.
Did that include ADHD kids?
ADHD kids that were autistic, kids that were emotionally...
Conduct disorder, that type of thing?
Etc. So it was really quite the horizon, but
Yeah.
Focused on the notion that people could learn if we could set the stage for them to learn.
So you both had a different background or a feeling in growing up. You were
Right.
having trouble with English class. Did you have trouble with math? Or
Absolutely.
Join the club.
I was not the math guy. I was much more the English-based person, and
Yeah.
actually liked to write. And it was really an important thing to express myself. And one of the things I did actually to help me learn was I read Supreme Court justices' opinions. And the reason I did that was because of the clarity of the information and how they spoke. So as a result, it taught me how to explain something fairly quickly, sparingly at the same time, which I thought was very important because they weren't going to go on forever about their decisions,
Sure.
right?
So let me guess, were you good in math?
No, I was not.
No, you both were.
No.
Oh, I have two kindred spirits here. I did awfully.
No.
I think I can speak for Clyde. I think we didn't really have, our parents were busy with 5 kids, and so we had to make our own career decisions.
5
And I
Right.
think we demonstrated both a lot of courage and fortitude to say, here are some things we're going to experiment with, and we're going to see how they go. So it wasn't this, path that was carved out. It was kind of more this serpentine process of discovering what is it that I can utilize within me and build upon. And I think we both had that, same
Right,
experience.
I think your mom, she was actually the author of the book that Clyde Hakim has put together, Anything for Bananas, and also his twin brother Cliff is with us, and he wrote Walk in My Shoes. What was I just going to say? Oh, your mom reminds me of my mom, and what you just said. If I had a bee in my bonnet, she said, you better go do it, because she knew I'd be really a wreck if I didn't. She knew. And so, therefore, giving me the okay to just... Once when I was a kid, she asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I just want to be. She got it. She did.
Experiment.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, just do what you want to do.
I think
Right.
you're right. I mean, I think my mother's literal last words on this earth were, "Stay on the creative side."
Ah.
And I think what she gave us all in the family was an infallible, undying, if you will, creative spirit.
Oh.
And she basically said, if you have that and you keep that alive, you can do anything. So it was our choice to choose from the palette of life
Yeah.
and to say, this is
Right.
how I'm going to basically harness the gifts I have and use them. And I think she struggled to harness the gifts she had because the context, the environment wasn't saying to her, go out and do it. but there was really very little as we grew up that was inhibiting us. You know, we're the baby boomers.
Ah, there you go. What was your dad like?
Well,
Was he creative too?
He was an immigrant.
Yeah.
I think he was very creative in his own way. He came to this country and had to learn how to speak English and write English. Before he only spoke and read and Arabic. So to go from a society that wrote from the right to left instead of the left to right, and to learn all of our idioms and do all of those kinds of things was an amazing thing in a very short period of time. And then to become an entrepreneur.
He was an entrepreneur too.
Yes, he was in the insurance business. In a sense, it was his own business. So he had to go out and literally pound the pavement every day and find people to sell life insurance to. He became a member of the $1 Million Round Table, which was one of the most prestigious places to be in the life insurance industry. And he would go and speak to people at conventions and things of this type. So he really rose to his capability and did very well. And he was a very charming person at the same time. He still is. He happens to be 97.
Just 97? He's a kid.
He's a kid, right.
How's he doing?
Right, he's pushing on. He's doing well. He walks almost every day.
Wow.
And he always has a smile on his face. And he really communicates well with us all the time. And he's going to be around, I think, for a long time.
Let's hope. That sounds awesome. It really does. We've got about 5 minutes left now. Cliff, again, Walk in My Shoes, The Path of Empathy and Compassion. You said that a lot of word of mouth, the people who contributed to this, do they...
I was deliberate about including people because the people I included really interpreted empathy, compassion. Another word for that is love. You know, so I had to feel that these people had a sense of not only giving to themselves but also giving to the planet.
Did they ask to be paid to contribute, or did
no?
They just...
Oh no! People were so happy to be included. I mean, it was part of their. My gift to them was to interview them and draw their shoes. And I asked people 2 questions. What was it like? What is it like to walk in your own shoes?
Yeah.
And how have you walked in other people's shoes?
Oh, that is so awesome. Cliff, one more time. How can they get a hold of your book?
By going to www.walkinmyshoesart.com.
And also, will there be a copy of it down in the library in the dedicated authors section?
Sure.
If you're local, that's great. If you're in Japan, not so good. But you can. I bet you can order it.
In fact, Jan, you can give that book to the library, and I will send you another book.
Oh, thank you. Oh boy. Okay, now Clyde, are you going to be? You're going to be giving a copy to the library.
Absolutely.
All right.
I brought 2.
And again, how can they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of the book by going to www.anythingforbananas.com, or to go to that same website, go to the contact page, and send me a note, and we'll get right back to you.
How long did it take you to get here from Plymouth today, up here to Upton?
An hour and 15 minutes.
Did you go far 95? I think
Yes.
I mentioned. How did? Paul was saying, well, they could go Route 3 to this and that. And,
No,
you went direct.
I went direct.
Did you cut through Foxborough?
Yes, yeah.
That's where my parents are.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to get here from Arlington?
Oh, just 3/4 of an hour, and I took $4.95.
Yeah.
So what are you guys going to do after this? Go out to eat or something together? Or?
I think so. That would be a nice
There
idea.
you go.
Yeah.
There's a really nice Chinese restaurant down the street. There's this area's got a lot of different places.
Let me add one more thing about
Sure.
the book.
Yeah.
The reason why it's entitled Anything for Bananas is because the main character in the book, Benji, will go to any length to get bananas. And the
Okay.
reason why is because he has 2 pets that will not speak. They happen to be parrots,
Yep.
and they speak Portuguese unless they have bananas.
Yeah.
So every time when Benji was in Brazil and he was on this ship, they were going from port to port. And every time Benji wanted to run and go to a place where he could get bananas, his father turned him around and said, no, we have to go to the next port.
Uh-huh.
So this kept on going on and on and on
Uh-huh.
until they got back on the ship to go back to the port of New York. And it was finally there that he ran through the streets of New York City to find a shop where he could get bananas.
I like bananas. In fact, I usually have one every morning. This is funny with my husband. He's not crazy about bananas, so I take the banana and I just chop a little bit. It's like going to the zoo and feeding the llama.
Yeah.
He giggles. I always put it down. But I love bananas, so that was naturally. If you cover them in chocolate sauce, or had that, and
Yeah.
like, what did Mr. Rogers do?
Yeah.
He did, I don't know, put raisins on top and peanut butter. Oh, heaven.
Sounds good to me.
Very good. Thank you guys for being with me, and we can have you back again, Any more books before we close on either one of you coming up? No?
Not right now.
No,
Yeah,
not right.
yeah.
I'm going to give it
Not
a rest
yet.
right, for a
Yeah.
while.
We're resting.
Can I just add one other thing? Is that
Sure.
okay? So I just want people to know that kindness is a choice that we make. It's a conscious choice. It's a choice of courage, and it's a choice of giving to others. And one of the people in the book is a woman named Annette Rafferty. She is 90 years old, and she founded Abby's House in Worcester.
Oh.
45 years ago.
Yeah, is she still with
And
us?
she's still with us. She's still involved in Abby's House. And talk about someone who has walked for kindness, who's walked for women in distress for the past 45 years. So anybody that says, I cannot be kinder, talk to Annette.
Fascinating. I mean, you must have met her, somebody by word of mouth?
Yes, one of my cousins, actually, who's a Worcester person, a Worcesterite, said, you've got to meet this person.
I believe that we had, a couple of years ago on the show, I think we had a woman who came in from Abby's House, and it was fascinating. I absolutely love that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that said, one of the things she said was that one of the people she took in, many of the people, but one of the people who was homeless, Annette asked her the question, what is the worst thing that you experience? And this homeless person said, a houseless person said, people not looking at me,
Yeah.
people not acknowledging me,
You guys, two brothers, both authors, their mother, a writer, and their father, also creative, an entrepreneur. Well, you didn't fall far from the trees, did you? You two are amazing. Again, they are twins. When you first meet them, it's like, are you sure? but you're sure. In fact, Cliff is the older one on the right, and the baby one is Clyde. Cliff, you were 6 minutes out before him?
5.
5.
He's good. I'm going to be the first. All right, you two. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time and be my guest.
Thanks a lot.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.